Hello, my name is Jeremy Schneider, and in this video, we're going to work through the white blood cell differential. By the end, you're going to be able to look at the differential and tell a clinical story about what's happening with your patient. And more importantly, you're going to be able to decide what nursing actions are necessary to provide care for that patient. There are 4 student learning outcomes that guide this lesson. Now notice that we're going to move from recognition to interpretation to calculation and finally to action. That progression mirrors the clinical judgment model necessary for not only the NCLEX, but for providing safe patient care. Recognizing a lab value is not the same as knowing what to do with it, and in that gap is where patient safety lives. So you may have heard a few different terms, a complete blood count with differential or a CBC with diff. So let's look at what that means. The total white count tells you how many soldiers are in the Army. The differential, or diff, tells you which divisions are deployed. Now a normal total count can hide a serious problem if one cell line is suppressed and another is compensating. That is why the absolute count, not the percentage, drives clinical decisions. So let's do a quick review of the 5 white blood cell types: neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. Now pay attention to the mnemonic. Never let monkeys eat bananas. This mnemonic's been around forever, and it works because the cells are listed in descending order of how many you will find in circulation. Neutrophils dominate, basophils are rare. Now I want you to think of neutrophils as the emergency response team. They arrive first, they arrive in force, but they do not live long. When bacteria invade, the bone marrow releases whatever it has on hand, including immature forms called bands. Now here's a critical concept worth remembering. The presence of bands is a clue that the body is pulling from reserves. Now you may have also heard the term a left shift, and it's one of those classic terms that kind of confuses students until they see it. So I want you to picture the maturation line written from left to right, with immature on the left and mature on the right. When the body is desperate, it pushes immature cells out of the marrow, and the balance of total cells shifts to the left. This is your early warning sign for bacterial infection. So let's look at some common causes of neutrophilia, or elevated neutrophil count: bacterial infection, acute stress, trauma, surgery, and corticosteroid therapy, versus decreased neutrophils, or neutropenia: chemotherapy, radiation, bone marrow suppression, severe sepsis, and autoimmune destruction. So now let's look at the absolute neutrophil count. And the ANC is not a percentage, it's an absolute count of the neutrophils. And there's a formula for it. The formula is you take the total white blood cell count, you multiply it by the percentage of segs plus the percentage of bands, and you divide it by 100. An absolute neutrophil count should be between 2,500 to 8,000 neutrophils. An ANC less than 1,500 indicates neutropenia. An ANC less than 500 indicates severe neutropenia and an extremely high infection risk. An ANC of less than 100 is a profound neutropenic state. Now let's talk about neutropenic precautions. Your patient needs to be in a private room. They should not have fresh flowers or raw foods. Anyone coming in and out of the room should observe strict hand hygiene. They shouldn't have sick visitors. The body temperature must be monitored closely, and any temperature greater than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit should be reported immediately. So if neutrophils are the first responders, lymphocytes are the special forces. They're slower to act, but they are precise, and they remember. Every vaccine you have ever received works because lymphocytes learned a threat and filed it away. When you see lymphocyte changes on a differential, you're often looking at a viral process or something chronic. So let's look at some common causes of an elevated lymphocyte count, which is also called lymphocytosis. Viral infections, pertussis, and chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Lymphopenia, or a decreased lymphocyte count, is often caused by HIV or AIDS, corticosteroid therapy, severe stress, sepsis, or immunosuppressive therapy. So lymphocytosis in a young adult patient with a sore throat and fatigue should make you think about mononucleosis, or mono. Lymphopenia is the hallmark of HIV progression, and it also appears in patients on long-term steroids. Now I want you to notice that steroids show up in both the neutrophil and lymphocyte discussions, but they push the count in opposite directions. Steroids cause neutrophils to be released from the bone marrow and pulled off the vessel walls into circulation, which raises the neutrophil count. At the same time, steroids cause lymphocytes to redistribute out of the bloodstream into lymphoid tissue and trigger lymphocyte apoptosis, which lowers the lymphocyte count. Same drug, same patient, opposite effects on the differential. This is the kind of detail that NCLEX loves because it rewards students who understand the mechanism over students who just memorize that steroids suppress the immune system. When lymphocytes are low, your patient is vulnerable to pathogens that a healthy immune system would clear without even a second thought. This is where patient education becomes a critical clinical intervention. Teaching a patient who has HIV about food safety and crowd exposure is a targeted response to an ominous lab value. So let's now talk about monocytes, and I want you to think of monocytes as the cleanup crew. Monocytes engulf debris and dead cells, and then they present pieces of pathogens to lymphocytes so the adaptive response can target them. Once they leave the bloodstream and enter tissue, they become macrophages. So let's look at some common causes for elevated monocyte count or monocytosis. The one that I really want you to consider is chronic infections, TB and endocarditis. Also, autoimmune disease, recovery phase of acute infections, and some forms of leukemias can cause monocytosis. Monocytopenia, or a decrease in monocyte count, can be caused by bone marrow suppression, the early phase of acute infections, or corticosteroids. An elevated monocyte count is a prompt to ask different questions. Instead of looking for an acute source, you're looking for something smoldering. Has the patient traveled recently? Have they had any dental work done? Do they have any known heart valve problems? Monocytosis plus a new heart murmur? I want you to think endocarditis. And that's where your assessment can directly narrow the differential diagnosis and allow for earlier interventions. Now we're going to look at eosinophils. And eosinophils are highly specialized. They handle parasites and they drive allergic inflammation. You rarely see them matter in the acute hospital setting unless something unusual is happening. But when they're elevated, the differential narrows quickly. So let's look at some common causes of an elevated eosinophil count, or eosinophilia. Allergic reactions, asthma, atopic disease, parasitic infections, some malignancies, and drug reactions including DRESS syndrome. For decreased eosinophil counts, or eosinopenia, acute stress response, corticosteroid therapy, or Cushing syndrome. Now, DRESS syndrome deserves special attention. It stands for drug reaction with eosinophilia and systemic symptoms. And it's one of those diagnoses that the nurse can catch before anyone else because we review the medication list, we're looking at the skin, and we're checking the temperature. I want you to think a new rash plus a new medication plus eosinophilia is a major red flag, and it warrants a rapid report to the provider. Now we're going to look at the final white blood cell type, basophils. And I want you to think of basophils as the demolition crew. They're the smallest population in circulation, but each one is packed with both histamine and heparin. And when they degranulate, they create an inflammatory effect far larger than their numbers would suggest. They are cousins to the tissue mast cells that drive anaphylaxis. Now here's another clinical pearl that I want you to commit to memory. A persistently elevated basophil count is one of the classic clues for chronic myeloid leukemia. Now you're unlikely to catch this as a nurse at the bedside, but you should recognize it for exams and knowing that this sign warrants hematology follow-up. Otherwise, basophils rarely drive bedside decisions. This is the table I want you to carry in your head. When you look at a differential, you're not reading 5 independent numbers. You're looking for a pattern. Bacterial patterns look different from viral patterns, and both look different from bone marrow failure. Pattern recognition is what separates a nurse who just reports lab values to a nurse who understands lab values. Now let's look at the 5 nursing priorities across the differential. First, always assess your patient for infection risk. Also, monitor the ANC for any patient on chemotherapy or with suspected immunosuppression. Protect your neutropenic patients with the appropriate precautions. Educate immunocompromised patients on risk avoidance and signs of infection. And finally, report fever in neutropenic patients as a medical emergency. The standard for a fever and neutropenic precaution is a sepsis rule-out until proven otherwise, and the expected standard is antibiotics within 1 hour. This is a time-sensitive nursing responsibility. So let's take a moment and work through this clinical scenario. This is the kind of reasoning the NCLEX is testing, and more importantly, it's the kind of reasoning your patient is counting on. So a 62-year-old client is receiving chemotherapy for colon cancer. Morning labs show a white blood cell count of 2,100 cells per millimeter cubed, segs of 30%, bands of 5%, an ANC of 735, and a temperature of 100.6 degrees Fahrenheit. What is the priority nursing action? So let's look at the 2 values that really stand out. The ANC of 735 places this patient in neutropenia, and the temperature crosses the reporting threshold. This is likely neutropenic fever, and it is a medical emergency. So what are our priority actions? Well, the first thing we're going to do is initiate neutropenic precautions if they're not already in place. We're going to protect the patient. Then we're going to notify the provider immediately. Then we're going to anticipate blood cultures, and finally we're going to anticipate receiving orders and initiating empiric antibiotic therapy within 1 hour. Don't be distracted by questions or potential answers on a test that says recheck temperature in an hour or administer acetaminophen. The priority is to notify the provider and prepare for therapy. Every hour of delay increases mortality. So now let's take an NCLEX-style question. All 4 clients have abnormal findings. Your job is to decide which one represents the greatest immediate risk. So here's the scenario. The nurse is reviewing laboratory results for 4 clients. Which client should the nurse assess first? A client with a white blood cell count of 12,000 and a productive cough. B, a client with an ANC of 450 and a temperature of 100.8 degrees Fahrenheit. C, a client with lymphocytosis and reports of sore throat. Or D, a client with monocytosis and a history of recent dental work. Option B, a client with an ANC of 450 cells and a temperature of 100.8 degrees Fahrenheit is correct because this is likely neutropenic fever and it is an emergency. It's the only finding here that has a 1 hour clock attached to it. So let's look at the other options. Option A is likely some bacterial respiratory disease that needs attention, but it's not immediately life-threatening. Option C is consistent with a viral process, most likely mononucleosis given the lymphocytosis and sore throat. Now, option D is interesting because monocytosis after dental work should make you think about subacute bacterial endocarditis. And this is a real concern, and it absolutely requires follow-up. But it develops over time rather than an acute process like neutropenic fever. When you prioritize, think in terms of the clock. The patient with the shortest safe window goes first. So let's look at our key takeaways from today. First, the differential tells a story that the total white blood cell count cannot. Second, absolute counts drive clinical decisions, not percentages. Third, an ANC below 500 plus fever is a medical emergency. 4, pattern recognition is what separates reporting from understanding. And 5, nursing actions based on the differential directly affect patient outcomes. 5 takeaways to carry forward. Notice that none of these are about memorizing normal values. They're about what to do with those values. That's the shift from student thinking to nurse thinking. And it's the shift that keeps patients safe. Thank you for working through this with me. The differential is one of those topics that feels overwhelming at first, but it becomes second nature with practice. Keep the pattern table close, and remember that every lab value is an invitation to think clinically.